Right, so this is the next bit to do. I've ordered a weatherproof junction box, and I've got some decking lights, and I've got a drill bit for drilling the hole in the decking boards, and a plug for plugging it into the power on the outside. These are the decking lights, so let's see what we've got. Yeah, there's a long chain of lights. So what I'll do is I'll cut the plug there. I can then use this junction box. These bits here just pop out. I've put a grommet there already, so that could go through there, and that'd be a waterproof grommet there. I'll put another grommet here, connect it all up, and that will just sit underneath then the decking. Okay, there's 10 lights all together, and then they've come like this, so you need to make sure that they're all attached properly. You probably don't need to use 10, you can then take one off and use 9 or choose how many you want to use. And where's the end? Here's the end, and then they give you this thing here, so that obviously just blocks off the end. You don't want any water obviously getting in there, so I'll just blank that off. Okay, let's see if they work. Yes, they work. So they obviously just slot in the decking boards that way, but you have to undo them all at each of their points to then slot it in. So you can undo them there, undo it there, slot it in, and then redo it up again. I've got a 22mm drill bit. It said on the instructions to use a 23mm drill bit, but I'll just use that and then just keep it in a bit further. I'll test it out on a spare bit of wood first, just to see if it works. While I've got it all here on the tabletop, I'm going to attach this into the junction box. It will be a bit easier.
I'm cutting the plug off as I'm going to connect the wires into the junction box, and then I'll connect the high tough cable that is under the decking into the junction box. The other end of the high tough cable goes to the power on the outside of the house. The junction box is waterproof, and it has a terminal strip inside for the wires to fix onto this. The spotlights are LED brushed chrome 30mm decking lights, and there's 10 of them altogether. I'm connecting the wires into the terminal strip that is inside the junction box. Great, that's all done and connected.
Okay, that'll sit under the decking there. I'll pop that out and I'll put that grommet in here. And it also comes with these. There's some screws to screw the lid on, and they've got plastic caps that go over the screws, obviously to waterproof it. So I'll wait till the last minute to put those on.
I've measured out exactly where I want the spotlights to go in the decking. There'll be spotlights along the length of this board, and then every 4 boards along this way towards the fence. Because there's an odd number, I have to have a gap of 2 boards at this end. I was initially going to have the uneven gap up this end, however under this board there's a bearer, so I had to avoid it. I also had to make sure that the spotlights are set in a little bit further so the spotlights don't foul the bearer. So I've measured 15 centimetres in from the end of the boards to avoid this bearer. The spotlight is going to go here, so it's not going to go anywhere near that bearer. Now I'm going to measure them accurately and drill the holes for the spotlights. but I'm going to practice this on a decking board offcut to make sure the hole is the correct size for the spotlights. Okay, let's test the spotlight and see if it fits. No, it doesn't fit. So I've now drilled a 25mm hole and it's great, it fits perfectly. I mean, everyone's got a 25mm drill bit, not a 23, and it fits great, look. The instructions that came with the decking lights were inaccurate to say to use a 20mm drill bit. Actually, a 25mm drill bit is the right size to use, and I couldn't find a 23mm drill bit anywhere. I've marked out exactly where the spotlights are going to go. I've measured 15 centimetres in from the end of the boards. This one here around the brickwork is not quite 15 centimetres, but I will make sure it's all in line with the others. Great, that's all the holes drilled, and there's quite a bit of sawdust here. It looks like there's been a little mouse here. It is a little bit worrying when you drill through decking boards, as you have to make sure that you mark up exactly where you're going to drill, as you only get one chance at it. I've brushed off all the sawdust and I've made sure that the decking boards are all clean and dust free and ready to be oiled. But the only problem is, it looks like it's going to rain. There's a big grey cloud coming. Okay, the rain's stopped now, it's dried up. I'm just going to use some oil. I'm going to use a roller to put on the oil. Okay, that's all done. I will let it dry overnight so I can fit the spotlights. Okay, the boards are now dry and now it's time to fit the spotlights. I've laid them out on the table here in the correct layout so I can easily pick them up and fit them in the right sequence. Okay, first of all I'm going to put the junction box in the right place, right next to the high tough cable. It's already wired up and ready to go, and the transformer is here. And the high tough cable goes into the junction box here. This long wire goes to the first spotlight, so I'll feed this under the bearers to where the first spotlight will go. I'm feeding the first spotlight wire through the decking boards and making sure that the spotlight is nice and secure and flush in the board. I'm connecting this up to the long wire that goes back to the transformer. Now it's time to put the next spotlight in place, and this just plugs into the next one in line. I'm making sure the wires are under the bearers. And now for the next one. I'm just going to make sure I do exactly the same again and connect them together. I'll make sure that the wires are nowhere near the bearers so they won't get trapped underneath when I screw the boards down. Okay, now to connect the high tough cable to the junction box. I'm I'm trimming off the excess length of cable as it's quite long. I'm feeding this through the grommet and into the junction box, and then I'm going to connect it to the terminal block. I'm just going to fit the plug on the other end of the high tough cable here. I've got a waterproof plug and it just plugs into the socket on the outside of my house. I've made sure the cable is tucked out the way so you can't really see it. I've made sure it's all neat and it goes all the way along here behind the retaining wall. Now to test it. Yes, it works. I can now close up the junction box. It's got little plastic caps that go over the screws to make it totally waterproof. Okay, now to fit the spotlights at the end of the boards along this side. All I'm doing is just connecting them to each other in exactly the same way I connected the other ones. They just daisy chain together. Now for the last one, and all I need to do is just screw on this blanking part. It's basically a rubber end that screws on to stop any water going into the electrics. Great, that's all done, and they all work. Okay, this essentially is the last bit of this project. All I've got to do now is just screw down the boards. I'm just going to do a final check to make sure that the spotlight wires are not being crushed at all. And that could cause a bit of damage, so I'm just going to do a final check on that and then screw the boards down. I'll just check it's all clear and then I'll screw the boards down. I'm just using regular decking screws. I'm making sure I screw them down into the bearers. So I've lifted the next board along just to check where the bearers are. Put a plastic spacer in between the first two boards to make sure that these are going to be in the right position, and it's going to be equal all the way along the boards. I'm doing the same with the next board and then just working my way along. I'm using a screwdriver on this one just to make sure it's in the right position because the board is slightly bowed. I'm now using my spirit level as a flat edge to follow the line of the bearers. Then I'm moving this along to continue the line. This will make sure that the screws are all in one line so it looks very neat. I'm using my plastic spacer just to check where the bearer is located, and then I know exactly where to put the decking screws. I'm doing the same again, but about a metre away. So I'm finding where the bearer is located, and then I'll put my screw in there. And then all I'll do is just follow the line back to the first screw. Great, that's all done, and the screws are nice and straight. That's another job done. In my next video I'll show you what it looks like now it's all finished. Thanks for watching and remember to subscribe.